Again, in reference and deference to these poetic ideals, Platon often said that the ability to recite poetry effectively is the first step towards the art of musically intoned declamation, which, in turn, is the very essence of true singing. He was justly fascinated by the closeness of speech patterns, the intonation and rhythm of all languages when translated into genuine folk song and opera. It's enough to listen to the sing-song quality of speech of market vendors or people conversing with each other across town squares. Some singing teachers encourage their students to sing art songs in their native language before trying grand opera. Platon urged students having problems developing their vocal potential to look at their native spoken language for inspiration. By reciting poetry like musically intoned declamation, which highlights natural speech patterns, students can begin to extend their vocal possibilities of resonance and range in a naturally expressive manner. As this gets easier, a song or aria acted with the singing voice is only a step away. How many technical problems resolve themselves when one simply makes the voice convey the meaning of the written text? People training to be opera singers need to be reminded of a core concept. That is, if they're to stay true to the spirit that gave birth to opera, then the aim of a singer must be to train the voice to reach the farthest corner of even the largest theatre without the aid of a microphone. The difference between singing acoustically and singing into a microphone is fundamental. With a microphone to aid and abet a singer's efforts, even a small, poorly produced, breathy voice can be enhanced and enlarged to unrecognizable proportions by sound engineers. Not only, but the intimacy conferred by the microphone conditions the natural dimension of theatrical declamation, which loses the amplitude of gesture, musical, vocal, and theatrical, and besides can easily lead to crooning. How different the thinking that generated opera. Platon's multifaceted nature led him to codify everything around the phenomenon of opera, including the question of overall form in a song, aria, ensemble work, and an entire opera, and how we apply what we've learned to all this. The form that opera took, uniquely Western in thought, was part of the Renaissance aesthetic that separated European art from its medieval past, which, in very broad terms, was more akin to non-European cultures as far as function and content go. It was the phenomenon of development inherent in opera that produced the need for dynamism in execution. Dramma in musica, as it was first called, has a beginning and a development leading inexorably to a cathartic end, all requiring a corresponding manner in its realization in terms of sound. And here's where the newborn's lament proves to be a microcosm of what will become our singing voice. For the sake of simplicity, we'll call each cry of the newborn infant a phrase. As we've already noted, each phrase starts from nothing, eventually reaching a point of maximum tension, calling for the next phrase. So, ideally, should an adult's voice when singing. Very important. Platon liked to point out that by returning to our primordial lament, we gain natural access to singing that is fresh, free, and truthfully expressive, while retaining the quality of innocenza, candidness. A free vocal emission allows for agility in scales, trills, and arpeggios, for the development of range from low notes to high notes, and for the ability to shade the voice in dynamics ranging from very soft to very loud, as well as helping the voice to maintain a homogeneous nature throughout its range. And to round out the precepts laid down by bel canto exponents and teachers of the 18th and 19th centuries, a singer should be able to perform, health permitting, till the end of their life. And now for the practical application of Nostra Regola, of all that we've acquired so far. For a start, we've seen how the physical aspect of producing the voice is strictly intertwined with the nature of opera itself. So, Technique, then, is interpretation. The two elements are inseparable. Again, reaching back to the ancients for corroboration of his ideas, Platon would remind us that in classical Greek, techne means art, craft, skill, expertise, science. What better proof is there of this ideal vision of the interpreter's craft, he would ask rhetorically. Here, then, is a description of the template he called NOSTRA REGOLA, applied to the performance of a song, aria, ensemble, and then an entire opera, as explained by Platon Shvets. Point 1. The first syllable of the first phrase is merely spoken, on the correct note, not sung, as softly and quickly as possible. Point 2. We begin to sing from the second syllable onwards, with each successive sound becoming gradually louder or more intense, while at the same time the tempo becomes gradually broader. Point 3. The tension generated by this crescendo e allargando snaps at the very end of the phrase, functioning like a springboard onto the automatic rebirth of the succeeding phrase, which repeats the same action only in a slightly more intense fashion. Point 4. Each succeeding phrase is a slightly more intense version of the previous one. Each phrase invites the next until the end of the song or aria is arrived at with a final cathartic release, a sense of conclusion. Ta-ta! And point 5. In the context of a performance of an entire opera, the crescendo e allargando microcosm of the initial phrase of the first aria finds its mesocosm in the body of the opera, while the entire performance expresses the macrocosm, the overview, the template of NOSTRA REGOLA. The result of a finely tuned performance should be one that mirrors the inexorable forward-moving nature of the score itself. If we want to apply these 5 points, if we want to speak and recite, we need to take a look at how to enunciate precious, life-generating consonants. Here again, Platon referred to the teachings of Michael Schwarz. The role of consonants is of primary importance, he taught. As long as they're economically produced, they have the vital function of catapulting the vowels and consequently the entire voice. You'll remember that the newborn baby begins to lose some of the stability of its voice production when it starts chewing solid food. Singers have been known to resort to all kinds of measures just to ensure resonance without opening and closing the jaw more than absolutely necessary. Some of these never failed to amuse Platon. Caruso often would sing calletar instead of cantar. Baritones from Battistini to Gobbi habitually sang la tempesta instead of tempesta nel mio cuor. When one singer was asked why he sang lo spettro, spectre, instead of lo scettro, scepter, he replied candidly that the P sound carries the voice further. The first consonant most of us utter as tiny infants is m, followed by the syllable ma, mama. The m, a labial, has the power to project the vowel a that follows with the utmost efficiency, as do other labials b and p. To produce the sounds f and v, we were given an extra bit of advice that enhances the voice's sonority. That is, to place the upper front teeth on the lower lip and actually keep that position without opening the lips, thus singing through f and v without disturbing the flow of the voice. The lips can be made to form a slight horizontal opening to compensate. Surprisingly, when the jaw is still, the rest of our singing apparatus kicks in, automatically making for correct placement and production. These forwardly produced consonants have their counterpart in the vowels I, as in si, or the English word bi, and in the Italian vowel, nearly as forwardly placed, the e, as in the Italian conjunction, e meaning and in the English bet. To articulate these two vowel sounds, the tip of the tongue should rest firmly just below the lower tooth sockets. The closed Italian o, as in ora, or the English or, sounds a little further back, going towards the point where the hard and soft palates meet. To produce the vowel U, one of the least congenial sounds because of its tendency to put a damper on the voice, we were warned against pursing our lips too far forward, as this tends to narrow the phonating area. Instead, what proves more successful here is maintaining a relaxed position of the lips while thinking the sound U. Platon then proceeded to describe the points of articulation of the center vowel, the open O, as in the Italian words o, I have, or andò, or the English not, and its corresponding point in articulating consonants, g, k, h, and ch, which all phonate at the point where the hard upper palate joins the soft palate. The broader, the more open the vowels, such as e and a, as in the Italian verb è, or the English man, the further back in the upper palate they sound. And the further back they sound, the more the tongue straightens out, eventually lying flat, but with the tip never losing contact with the lower tooth sockets. The micro-movements needed to articulate consonants and vowels are spontaneous in most human beings. Nevertheless, singers need to be aware of these movements if they're to avoid contractions of the lips, tongue, or larynx. In melodeclamation or singing, consonants and vowels are to be pronounced with a minimum of preparation and without chewing, without opening and closing the jaw more than is absolutely necessary. Some of the greatest stage and screen actors, famous for their eloquent speaking voices, use this very technique. A few examples are Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud, Christopher Plummer. You can check them out on YouTube for yourselves. Just as with the process of the collapse and lament, where the upper torso goes from one state of repose to the next, so should the tongue, lips, and larynx return to their initial state of rest immediately after each syllable has been articulated. This is a very important point. To help people maintain this state of repose around the mouth, Platon advised a loosening up exercise which involves blowing through your lips like a horse does to make them flap. The vocal exercises handed down to Platon by his teacher Michael Schwarz each had a specific aim. Except for the one meant to help eliminate the intervocalic y sound between two vowels, mio, Maria, and not mio, Maria, they begin with a consonant. The series of syllables, short or long, are to be executed according to the rules of NOSTRA REGOLA. That is, starting as casually and nonchalantly, as softly as possible, continuing with a crescendo e allargando, with the final tone being produced with ease and with maximum intensity and stability as our goal. If the running leap at the beginning of the exercise or phrase is done properly, the last note, long, intense, and free, will come off besplatno, the Russian for free of charge or without paying. Schwarz told his pupils that the voice should sound like the steady drone produced by the Messerschmitt, a German World War II fighter plane, to bring home even further the point that the whole voice should never be pushed out as through a siphon, but rather left to resonate freely within the body. Comparing the voice production of singers of yesteryear with more recent performers through recordings of the same arias is instructive. The sheer intensity of the sound in both large and small voices of singers of the past reaches out to the listener with an immediacy that remains hard to find in more recent renderings, despite the technological progress which can capture every nuance with maximum fidelity. People who heard Tito Schipa in the theatre said that his voice was neither small nor large. It was simply rich in overtones.
È la solita storia del pastore Il povero ragazzo voleva raccontarla. Essa dormì. C'è nel sonno l'oblio, come l'invidia. Anch'io vorrei dormire così, nel sonno alla men l'oblio trovar, la pace sola cercando io vorrei poter tutto ma ogni sforzo è vano, davanti io sempre di lei. Il dolce la pace tolta è solo a me, perché vedi io tanto pena. Lei sempre lei mi parla al cor, fatale visione mi lascia, mi fa tanto male. Ahimè.
Normally disinclined to use visualizations as a mean of explaining principles of technique to his students, Platon did, however, resort to one to illustrate the dynamicity which can be freely applied to simple exercises, just as to the most complex operatic music. Imagine you're watching a bus going at full speed in the distance. You run to catch up with it, this corresponds to the beginning of a phrase, leap on it, grasp onto the pole in the open doorway of the bus, and you're away, which is the equivalent of the middle and last part of the phrase. Further translated into practical terms, Platon would add that ideally we should start the phrase a fraction of a second late, thus giving ourselves an even greater stimulus for singing that first part softly and quickly as possible, so as to catch up in time to do a crescendo e allargando with greater urgency. Important. The expanding trajectory of the upper torso accompanies the entire phrase, be it short or long. It does not accompany the rise and fall of the melody. Very important indeed. And of course, once this is mastered, it becomes imperceptible to the audience. It's the idea that remains in the singer's muscle memory. Precision of timing here is paramount. If there's any lingering between the end of one phrase and the beginning of the next, we breathe in too much air. and we know this will interfere with the production of the voice. Again, a fundamental premise of the method expounded by Platon Shvets is that breathing should not interfere with speaking, declaiming, reciting, or singing, just as these should not interfere with breathing.